Autumn rain pattered against the station windows as Sergeant Mike Collins finished his paperwork. The front door creaked open, but no one called out. Only the click of nails on linoleum announced the visitor. Jasper, retired K9 officer, soaking, wet and carrying something in his mouth. The German shepherd dropped a mud-caked package at Mike's feet, then sat back, watching intently with intelligent eyes. Inside was a blood-stained journal, its pages filled with a child's handwriting, detailing the final hours before Emma Parker vanished a decade ago. What forces drove this loyal animal to unearth evidence everyone had missed? Before we jump back, and tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The station fell silent as Sergeant Collins carefully lifted the journal from its muddy wrapping. Officer Jenkins, the night dispatcher, stood frozen at the doorway, her coffee forgotten in her hand. "Is that really Jasper?" she whispered. "Morrison's Jasper." The German shepherd's ears perked up at the mention of his former handler. His coat, once gleaming black and tan, had dulled with age, but the intelligence in those amber eyes remained sharp. Around his neck hung a worn leather collar, its police badge still attached despite years of retirement. "Been about 3 years since he left the force with Morrison," Collins said, reaching down to pat the dog's damp head. "And 2 months since Morrison passed." Everyone knew Detective James Morrison's story. 30 years on the force, the last 12 with Jasper at his side. The duo had solved more cases than any other K9 team in department history. Morrison's battle with pancreatic cancer had been mercifully brief, but the loss had left a void in the small department. "Where's he been staying?" Jenkins asked finally, setting down her mug to kneel beside the animal. "Morrison's daughter took him in, lives about 20 miles from here." Collins frowned. "That's a long way for an old dog to travel on his own." Chief Barbara Wilson pushed through the gathering officers, her perpetually stern expression softening at the sight of the shepherd. "Well, I'll be damned," she murmured. She'd been a rookie when Jasper joined the force. "What's he brought us?" Collins held up the journal, its pages warped from moisture but the childish handwriting still legible. "Something about the Parker case? Emma Parker?" The mood shifted instantly. Every officer in the room recognized that name, the department's most haunting failure. 8-year-old Emma Parker had vanished without a trace 10 years ago, leaving behind a devastated family and a town forever changed. "That case nearly broke Morrison," Wilson said quietly. "He never stopped looking, even after we had to officially move on." Collins carefully opened the journal to a random page, where a child's handwriting detailed ordinary days, turned extraordinary by the powers of imagination. But as he flipped further, the entries grew darker, filled with a child's observations of things adults might miss. "This belongs to the brother," Collins realized. "Thomas Parker. He was 13 when Emma disappeared." Wilson pulled on a pair of gloves and took the journal, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the final pages. "This is new evidence. Some of these details were never made public." She looked down at Jasper, who sat at perfect attention, as if awaiting orders. The dog's eyes never left the journal. "How did you find this boy? And why bring it now?" Wilson whispered. Jenkins spoke up, her voice tinged with the superstition that often circulated among officers who'd seen too much. "Morrison always said Jasper had a sixth sense about evidence. Remember that Holloway kidnapping? Jasper found that girl's bracelet buried under 6 inches of dirt." Collins nodded slowly. "Morrison's been gone 2 months. Maybe Jasper's been looking, finishing what they started." Jasper's collar jingled as he stood suddenly, walking to the caseboard where old investigations were mapped out. The Parker case had been reduced to a single photo, tucked in the corner, a smiling blonde girl, forever 8 years old. The shepherd whined, looking back at the officers. "I think we're reopening the Parker case," Wilson announced, authority ringing in her voice. "Collins, secure this journal for forensics. Jenkins, call the Parker family, and somebody get this dog some water and food. He's earned it." As the station burst into activity, Collins couldn't help but feel that Morrison was somehow present, guiding them through his loyal partner. He looked down at Jasper, who had returned to his side. "Good boy," he whispered. "Very good boy." The next morning, Collins pulled the faded case file from the archives. The cardboard box was heavier than it should be for a case with no resolution, filled with interview transcripts, search grids, and hundreds of dead-end leads. Chief Wilson cleared the conference room for their review. Jasper lay quietly in the corner, watching them sift through the remnants of the investigation that had consumed the department a decade ago. October 17th, 2015, Collins read from the initial report. Emma Parker, age 8, last seen playing at Riverside Park around 4:30 p.m. Mother reported her missing at 6:15 when she didn't return for dinner. The photographs showed a small blonde girl with a gap-toothed smile and bright blue eyes. School. Pictures. Family snapshots, and then the age progression composites that had appeared on missing person posters across the state. Images of a child who never got to grow up. "I remember this search," Wilson said, spreading out the grid maps. "We had over 200 volunteers, covered every inch of woodland, dragged the river twice. Officer Lisa Chavez, the department's newest detective, studied the family photos. The parents, Robert and Diana Parker, and the brother Thomas. Where are they now?" "Still in town," Collins replied. "Robert runs the hardware store on Main. Diana teaches at the elementary school. Thomas left for college and never moved back. Last I heard, he became a professor somewhere out of state." Chavez flipped through the suspect interviews. There were 3 main persons of interest but no arrests. No physical evidence linking anyone to Emma, Wilson confirmed. The case went cold after about 18 months of active investigation. Collins opened the journal that Jasper had delivered, now carefully preserved in an evidence bag. According to these entries, Thomas was keeping notes about his sister's activities, almost like he was watching over her. He pointed to a passage, written in a 13-year-old's uneven script. "Emma says Uncle Jack gives her the creeps. She doesn't like how he looks at her. Mom and Dad don't listen when she tries to tell them." Wilson frowned. "Uncle Jack? There's no uncle mentioned in the family interviews." Collins flipped through the case notes. "Here, Jack Winters. Not an uncle, but Robert Parker's business partner. They owned the hardware store together back then. He was interviewed. Had an alibi for the afternoon Emma disappeared. A business trip to Portland. Receipt from a hotel, confirmed by staff." "This journal tells a different story," Chavez observed, reading further entries. "Thomas was worried about this Jack person. Weeks before Emma vanished." Collins nodded. "The question is, why didn't Thomas share these concerns during the investigation?" Wilson sighed, the weight of the case evident in her expression. 13-year-old boy, traumatized by his sister's disappearance, parents falling apart. He might not have understood the significance, or maybe he tried and wasn't taken seriously. "There's something else," Collins said, reaching the final entries. "The handwriting changes slightly in these last pages. More rushed, almost frantic." He read aloud. "I saw her get into the car. I tried to follow. I think he saw me." The entry was dated the day of Emma's disappearance. The next page had been torn out. Jasper suddenly stood, ears alert, and moved to Collins' side. He nudged the journal with his nose. "I think we need to find Thomas Parker," Wilson decided, "and figure out why this journal was buried somewhere only a trained police dog could find." Chavez looked at the shepherd with new respect. "Do you think Morrison was working this case on his own after retirement?" "Morrison never gave up on any case," Wilson said quietly, "and neither did his partner." All eyes turned to Jasper, who had returned to his watchful position in the corner, his mission seemingly incomplete. The forensics report confirmed what they already suspected. The journal belonged to Thomas Parker. His fingerprints, preserved from the original investigation, matched those found beneath layers of dirt and time. More surprising were the traces of blood found on the final pages, too degraded for DNA analysis, but unmistakably human. Collins, Wilson, and Chavez gathered. Again, this time with the journal carefully transcribed and photographed. Its fragile pages, too delicate for repeated handling. The earliest entries are typical 13-year-old stuff, Chavez observed. School problems, complaints about parents, video, games he wanted. Collins nodded. Then, about 3 months before Emma disappeared, the tone changes. He pointed to an entry from July 2015. Emma came to my room crying tonight, said she didn't want to go to the store tomorrow if Uncle Jack was going to be there. I told her I'd go with her, but she said that wouldn't help. Don't know why Mom and Dad can't see it. 2 weeks later, followed Emma to the store today. Watched through the window. Uncle Jack kept finding reasons to touch her shoulder or fix her hair. I hate him. Emma looked like she wanted to disappear. Wilson's expression darkened. And the parents dismissed this? According to Thomas, yes, Collins said. There's an entry here. Tried to tell Dad about Uncle Jack being creepy with Emma. He got mad, said Jack was his oldest friend and business partner, and I should show some respect. Said I was just jealous of the attention Emma gets. Classic predator behavior, Chavez noted. Establish trust with the family, create situations where concerns can be dismissed as misunderstandings. The entries continued through August and September, documenting Thomas's growing concern and Emma's increasing anxiety. By early October, Thomas was documenting his own surveillance of his sister, following Emma home from school now. She doesn't. No. Told her I had chess club so she wouldn't wait for me. Want to make sure she gets home okay. October 12th. Emma says Uncle Jack offered to give her special art lessons at his house. Said she'd get to use real paints, not kid stuff. She asked Mom, who said it sounded nice. They don't get it. October 15th. Saw Uncle Jack's car drive past our house 3 times today. Emma was playing in the front yard. When I told Dad, he said Jack was probably checking inventory deliveries. Dad's an idiot. Then came the final complete entry, dated October 17, 2015, the day Emma disappeared. Emma's going to the park. Told Mom I'd keep an eye on her, but she said Emma's fine on her own. It's only 2 blocks. Going to follow anyway. Don't trust that creep, Jack. His car has a broken taillight now. Makes it easy to spot. The partial entry that followed was written in shakier handwriting. I saw her get into the car. I tried to follow. I think he saw me. The next page had been torn out. Thomas was keeping watch over his sister, Collins said quietly. He suspected something long before it happened. Wilson rubbed her forehead. And nobody listened to him. We need to find him, Chavez insisted. Find out what he remembers about that day. Collins was already at his computer. Thomas Parker, current age 23, got him. He's a teaching assistant in the psychology department at Westlake University, about 200 miles from here. Specializes in childhood trauma research. Wilson nodded grimly. No surprise there. Collins, you and Chavez drive out tomorrow. Before you go, check in with the Parkers. Don't mention the journal yet. Just say we're reviewing cold cases and want to speak with Thomas. What about Jasper? Chavez asked. The dog hadn't left the station since his arrival, sleeping under Collins' desk at night. He comes with you, Wilson decided. That dog brought us this far. I'm not about to bench him now. The campus of Westlake University sprawled across green hills, students hurrying between Gothic buildings beneath autumn-stripped trees. Collins and Chavez, with Jasper at their side, navigated through crowds of young people who paused to admire the German shepherd's dignified presence. Psychology department is in Mercer Hall, Collins said, checking the campus map. Thomas Parker teaches an introductory course on Tuesdays and Thursdays. They arrived outside a lecture hall just as students began filing out. Collins checked his watch. 11:20 a.m., end of the morning session. They waited until the stream of undergraduates thinned, then entered the now empty classroom. A slender young man with sandy hair was gathering papers at the lectern. He wore wire-rimmed glasses and a cardigan that seemed too old for his years. Nothing in his calm demeanor suggested someone haunted by tragedy. but the shadows under his eyes told a different story. "Thomas Parker?" Chavez called out. He looked up, puzzled. "Yes? I'm Detective Chavez. This is Sergeant Collins from the Oak Ridge Police Department." The papers in Thomas's hands trembled slightly. "Oak Ridge? Has something happened to my parents?" "Your parents are fine," Collins assured him. "We're here about your sister's case." Thomas's expression shifted. Hope, fear, and resignation passing across his face in rapid succession. "You've found Emma?" "No," Collins said gently, "but we have new evidence." Thomas sank into the nearest chair, his university ID card swinging. From a lanyard around his neck, a photo of a serious young man, name and credentials neatly printed beneath. "Professor Thomas Parker, Psychology Department." "What evidence?" he asked. "After 10 years." Collins nodded to Jasper, who had been watching Thomas intently. "This is Jasper. He used to work with Detective Morrison." "I remember him," Thomas said, offering his hand for the dog to sniff. "He was there during the search." Jasper approached cautiously, then pressed his muzzle against Thomas's palm in a gesture of recognition. 3 days ago, Jasper showed up at our station with this. Collins produced photos of the journal, carefully preserved in plastic. "We believe it belongs to you." Thomas's face drained of color. He took the photos with shaking hands, staring at the familiar handwriting. "My journal. I lost this years ago. Where did he find it?" "We were hoping you could tell us," Chavez said. "You wrote about your concerns regarding your father's business partner, Jack Winters." Thomas flinched at the name. "Jack, yes, I tried to tell them he wasn't right. The way he looked at Emma." He trailed off, studying the photos more carefully. "These last entries, I don't remember writing these." Collins and Chavez exchanged glances. "The final entry is dated the day Emma disappeared," Collins said. "You wrote that you saw her get into a car and that you followed." Thomas shook his head, distress evident. "I don't remember that. I don't remember much about that day at all. The doctors said it was trauma-induced amnesia. I hit my head somehow. They found me unconscious at the edge of the park around dusk." Jasper whined softly. Moving closer to Thomas, "The journal indicates you were watching out for Emma," Chavez said. "That you were worried about Winters." "I was," Thomas confirmed, "but nobody believed me. I was just the moody teenage brother, jealous of attention. After she was gone, I was the one they looked at first. My own parents wondered if I'd—" He couldn't finish the sentence. Collins placed a gentle hand on Thomas's shoulder. "We need your help, son. Would you be willing to come back to Oak Ridge, just for a few days? See if being there might trigger any memories about what happened that day." Thomas stared at the journal photos, at the words he'd written but couldn't remember. "I haven't been back since leaving for college. My parents, we're not close anymore." "This could be the break we've been waiting for," Chavez urged. "For Emma." Thomas looked down at Jasper, who had settled beside his chair, as if he'd found what he'd been searching for. "For Emma," Thomas echoed softly. "Yes, I'll come." The Welcome to Oak Ridge sign appeared on the horizon, its faded paint and weathered wood a testament to the town's struggle. Population 8,742, unchanged from when Thomas had left. In his mind, the sign had always carried an invisible postscript, "Home of the Emma Parker disappearance." Thomas stared out the passenger window, his overnight bag clutched tightly in his lap. Jasper sat in the back seat, alert and watchful, occasionally pressing his nose to the glass when familiar landmarks appeared. "Town hasn't changed much," Collins remarked, breaking the heavy silence. "That's Oak Ridge for you," Thomas replied. Frozen in time. They passed the elementary school where Emma had attended 3rd grade, the ice cream shop where their mother had taken them on Fridays, the hardware store, Parker and Winters Hardware, the sign now reading simply Parker's in faded letters. "Your father still runs the store?" Chavez asked from the driver's seat. Thomas nodded. "After the partnership dissolved, he kept it going. Smaller scale, it's all he knows." As they approached a residential neighborhood of modest homes with well-kept yards, Thomas's knuckles whitened around his bag. Could we drive past my old house first, before meeting my parents at the station? Chavez nodded, following his directions until they pulled up before a two-story colonial with blue shutters. The house looked smaller than Thomas remembered, the once vibrant garden now maintained but uninspired. They still live here? Collins asked. Yes. They couldn't bear to leave in case Emma... Thomas didn't finish the sentence. My room became a home office. Emma's they left exactly as it was. A shrine. An elderly woman appeared on the neighboring porch, squinting at the police car. Recognition dawned on her face as she spotted Thomas. Mrs. Fletcher, Thomas said softly. She's still here. The woman waved tentatively, then disappeared inside her house. She was always kind to me after... Thomas turned away from the window. She brought casseroles and never asked questions. She told my parents once that the police were looking in the wrong direction. That caused quite a fight. They continued to the station, where Robert and Diana Parker were already waiting. 10 years had aged them beyond their years. Robert's once powerful frame now stooped, Diana's blonde hair entirely grey and pulled into a severe bun. They sat rigidly apart in the waiting area, the space between them a gulf of unspoken blame. Tommy, Diana whispered, rising when she saw her son. She reached for him but stopped short of an embrace, uncertain of her welcome. Robert didn't stand. So you've decided to come home. Only took a decade. I'm here to help with the investigation, Dad, Thomas replied, his voice carefully neutral. They found my old journal. Robert's expression darkened. More of your stories? Wasn't it enough? That you... Mr. Parker, Collins interrupted firmly. Your son is here as a potential witness, not a suspect. We believe his journal contains valuable information. Diana touched her husband's shoulder in warning. We just want to find out what happened to Emma. That's all any of us want. The tension was broken by Jasper, who had been sitting quietly beside Collins. The dog approached Robert, tail wagging cautiously. Morrison's dog, Robert acknowledged, his tone softening slightly. Good to see he's still around. Jasper sniffed Robert's hand, then moved to Diana, who knelt to stroke his head. He was so dedicated during the search, she murmured. Never seemed to tire. As they moved toward the conference room, Mrs. Fletcher appeared at the station entrance, slightly out of breath. Thomas, she called, I needed to tell you. I saw something that day. I tried to tell them back then, but no one listened to an old woman. Thomas turned, hope flickering across his face. What did you see, Mrs. Fletcher? A car, she said, parked at the edge of the park. Not from around here, with a broken tail light. Mrs. Fletcher's revelation shifted the investigation's momentum. After a detailed interview, in which she described the unfamiliar dark sedan with the broken right tail light, Chief Wilson organized a systematic revisiting of key locations from the case. Their first stop was the Parker home. Thomas hesitated. At the threshold, memories flooding back as he stepped inside. The house smelled the same. His mother's lavender potpourri and the faint scent of wood from his father's clothes. We haven't changed much, Diana said, watching Thomas take in the familiar surroundings. Robert remained silent, awkwardly trailing. Behind the group, the living room still displayed family photos, including Emma's last school picture. Thomas paused before it, studying his sister's face, the gap-toothed smile, the messy blonde pigtails, the sparkle in her blue eyes. Would you be willing to show us Emma's room? Chavez asked gently. Diana nodded. Of course. It's just as it was. They climbed the stairs, passing Thomas's old bedroom, now an impersonal office, to reach a door decorated with a wooden plaque painted with flowers and the name Emma in childish letters. I made that for her 6th birthday, Thomas said softly. Diana opened the door to reveal a perfectly preserved 8-year-old girl's bedroom. Pink walls, stuffed animals arranged on the bed, dolls seated at a tiny tea table. A layer of dust covered everything despite evidence of regular cleaning. The room felt airless, suspended in time. We thought, when she came home, she'd want her things the way she left them, Diana explained, her voice breaking. Jasper entered cautiously, sniffing around the perimeter before settling near a small desk where a child's drawing lay unfinished. Thomas approached it, recognizing Emma's artistic style in the half-completed house with stick figures in the yard. "She was drawing this the morning she disappeared," he said. Suddenly, Thomas swayed, gripping the desk for support. His face paled as he stared at the drawing. "Thomas?" Collins moved to his side. "You okay?" "I remember something," Thomas whispered. "She was wearing her blue ribbon that day. The one Grandma gave her. She never went to the park without it." It wasn't much, but it was the first spontaneous memory Thomas had recovered. They continued their tour, visiting the park next. Riverside Park had been renovated since Emma's disappearance. New playground equipment, better lighting, security cameras mounted on tall poles. The improvements were the town's response to tragedy, as if better swings and slides could erase what had happened. Thomas walked the perimeter slowly, Jasper at his side. The dog seemed unusually attentive to Thomas, staying close as if sensing his distress. "The last confirmed sighting was near the swing set," Collins explained, consulting the case file. "Two mothers with their children saw Emma around 4:30. She was alone." Thomas stopped abruptly, staring at a dense line of trees at the park's edge. "There used to be a path there, a shortcut to the old industrial area. It's not on any of our search maps," Chavez noted, checking the file. "It wasn't an official path, just one the kids made. Emma and I used it sometimes when we walked to the store." Collins approached the tree line, finding a faint break in the undergrowth. "Worth checking." As they made their way to the final location, the pond that had been dredged during the initial search, Thomas grew increasingly agitated. "Jack Winters," he said suddenly. "You mentioned he was Dad's business partner. I need to know everything. About him, where he is now." "He still lives in town," Collins replied carefully. "It became quite successful in real estate after the hardware store partnership ended." "Why?" Thomas shook his head, frustrated. "I don't know. Just a feeling." Jasper, who had been investigating the pond's edge, suddenly barked and darted toward the tree line they'd noted earlier. He stopped, looking back at them expectantly. "I think he wants us to follow," Chavez said. Thomas was already moving. "Emma," he whispered. "He knows something about Emma." Jasper led them through the overgrown path, his nose working the ground methodically. The trail narrowed as they pressed deeper into the woods, branches clutching at their clothes. Collins and Chavez exchanged concerned glances. This area should have been searched thoroughly 10 years ago. "The original search pattern followed established trails," Collins said, as if reading their thoughts. "If this path wasn't on any maps," Thomas pushed ahead, driven by a growing sense of urgency. "Emma and I discovered it one summer. It was our secret route." The path eventually opened to a small clearing where the remnants of an old treehouse lay rotting on the ground. Jasper circled the area, sniffing intently before stopping at the base of a large oak tree. He began pawing at the earth. Collins knelt beside the dog, brushing away leaves and dirt. "There's something here." He pulled a small trowel from his kit and carefully excavated the spot Jasper indicated. 3 inches down, something blue appeared in the soil. Collins gently extracted it. A weathered hair ribbon, once bright blue, now faded and stained. Thomas staggered backward. "That's Emma's, the one Grandma gave her." Chavez quickly photographed the ribbon in situ before Collins sealed it in an evidence bag. "We'll need to test this for DNA." Thomas stared at the ribbon, his breathing becoming erratic. I remember following her. She was skipping ahead on the main path, but then I saw her turn this way. I called out to her, but she didn't hear me." His face contorted with the effort of recalling. "I ran to catch up, but when I got to the clearing, there was a car, parked just beyond those trees." He pointed to a spot where the underbrush thinned. near an old service road, dark blue or black, and she was talking to someone. Collins placed a steadying hand on Thomas's shoulder. "Take it slow. This is important." Thomas pressed his palms against his temples. "It's all fragments. I can't see the person's face. Just Emma looking up, shaking her head. I was hiding behind that tree." He pointed to the oak where the ribbon had been buried. "I was scared. Not for me. For her." "What happened next?" Chavez prompted gently. "I don't know. It goes blank." Thomas's frustration was palpable. "Why can't I remember?" "Trauma can block memories," Collins said, "especially in children, but they're still there, buried like this ribbon." Jasper had continued searching, now investigating the area near where Thomas had indicated the car was parked. He barked again, drawing their attention. Chavez joined the dog, finding disturbed earth. "Someone's been digging here recently." Collins helped her excavate, uncovering what appeared to be the remnants of a shallow grave. But it was empty. Whatever was buried here was removed within the past few weeks. Thomas watched them work, a horrifying realization dawning. Detective Morrison must have found something before he died. Collins nodded slowly, and somehow trained Jasper to find it again. Or Jasper found it on his own, Chavez suggested. These dogs have incredible instincts. Thomas suddenly doubled over, a choked sob escaping him. "I was here. I was right here when and I didn't." He collapsed to his knees, 10 years of buried grief and guilt erupting at once. Jasper was instantly at his side, pressing against him as Thomas broke down. The dog whined softly, licking Thomas's face as tears flowed freely. "It wasn't your fault," Collins said firmly, kneeling beside him. "You were a child yourself." Thomas clutched the dog, burying his face in Jasper's fur. "I was supposed to protect her. I promised her I would." "You tried," Chavez said gently. "Your journal shows how hard you tried to warn everyone. And now you're helping us find the truth," Collins added. "You're still protecting her, Thomas." As they helped Thomas to his feet, Collins's phone rang. It was the station. "Chief Wilson wants us back immediately," he reported after hanging up. "The lab found something on the journal pages, fingerprints that don't belong to Thomas." "Whose?" Thomas asked, wiping his face. Collins's expression was grim. Jack Winters's estate sat on the highest hill overlooking Oak Ridge, a modern mansion of glass and stone that seemed to flaunt its superiority over the modest town below. Chief Wilson had arranged an interview, careful to frame it as routine follow-up rather than a renewed investigation. "Winter's development," Collins read from the file as they waited in the station's conference room. "From hardware store partner to real estate mogul in just over a decade." On the table lay a yellow document, the original partnership agreement between Robert Parker and Jack Winters, recovered from old business records. The contract detailed a 50-50 split that had dissolved shortly after Emma's disappearance, with Winters selling his share to Robert for a fraction of its value. Why? Would a shrewd businessman practically give away his half of a profitable business? Chavez wondered. Thomas studied the document, his expression troubled. Dad never talked about it, just said the partnership ended because they wanted different things. When Winters arrived, his expensive suit and practiced smile exuded confidence. At 58, he remained fit and tanned, his silver hair perfectly styled. Only the cold calculation in his eyes betrayed something harder beneath the polished exterior. "Chief Wilson," he greeted warmly, ignoring the others until his gaze fell on Thomas. His smile faltered momentarily. "Thomas Parker, it's been years. I heard you became a professor." Thomas nodded stiffly. "Psychology." "Fascinating field," Winters replied smoothly, taking a seat. "Now, how can I help Oak Ridge's finest today?" Wilson kept her tone casual. "We're reviewing some cold cases, including Emma Parker's disappearance." "Such a tragedy," Winters said, his expression appropriately somber. "I think about that poor little girl often." "You were close to the family," Collins noted. "Business partners with Robert." Like brothers, Winters confirmed, until the tragedy tore everything apart. Robert was never the same. You sold your share of the business shortly after Emma disappeared, Chavez observed. At a significant loss. Winters shrugged. Money wasn't important in the face of such grief. Besides, I'd already been exploring real estate opportunities. The timing was unfortunate, but it allowed me to focus on my new ventures. Wilson slid a photo across the table, the blue ribbon. This was recently discovered on a trail behind Riverside Park. We believe it belonged to Emma. Winters barely glanced at it. I wouldn't know about children's accessories. You were interviewed during the original investigation, Collins continued. Your alibi was a business trip to Portland. Correct. Hotel records confirmed it, yet Mrs. Fletcher recalls seeing a car matching yours near the park that afternoon. Winters smiled thinly. Mrs. Fletcher was elderly even then, and my car was quite common, a black Cadillac. Half the successful men in town drove similar vehicles. With a broken right tail light, Thomas interjected. Something flickered in Winters's eyes, surprise quickly masked. I don't recall any damage to my car. I maintained it meticulously. Wilson changed tactics. You were referred to as Uncle Jack by the Parker children, though you weren't related. A term of endearment, Winters replied. I had no children of my own. Robert's kids were like family to me. Thomas's hands clenched beneath the table. You paid special attention to Emma. Winters's smile didn't reach his eyes. I was fond of both Parker children. Emma was artistically talented. I encouraged that. By offering private lessons, Thomas pressed. Thomas, Wilson cautioned, but the young man continued. You offered to teach her at your house. Alone. Winters's composure slipped slightly. I don't know what you're implying, but I was simply being kind to a creative child. Whatever you think you remember is colored by trauma and grief. Wilson ended the interview shortly after, thanking Winters for his cooperation. As he left, his parting words carried a subtle threat. I'm always happy to help our local police, though I'm concerned about potentially defamatory questions. My attorneys would be too. Once he was gone, Thomas slumped in his chair. He's lying. We know, Wilson assured him, but we need evidence, not just suspicion. Collins's phone rang. It's the lab, he announced, answering. After a brief conversation, he hung up, his expression grim. Preliminary DNA results on the ribbon are a match for Emma Parker. As the implications sank in, the station phone rang. The dispatcher appeared at the conference room door. Chief, anonymous caller just hung up. Said to tell you that the journal is planted evidence and you're looking in the wrong direction. Wilson's eyes narrowed. Sounds like we've struck a nerve. The Oak Ridge Medical Center hadn't changed. Same faded blue walls, same antiseptic smell. Thomas sat nervously in a small consultation room while Dr. Eleanor Reeves prepared for their session. As the town's only practicing psychiatrist, she had treated Thomas after Emma's disappearance. Hypnotherapy can help access suppressed memories, Dr. Reeves explained to the group, but there are risks. False memories can form under suggestion, and recovering traumatic memories can be destabilizing. Thomas nodded. I understand the risks. I need to remember. Chief Wilson, Collins, and Chavez would observe from behind a one-way mirror. Jasper, however, refused to leave Thomas's side, settling at his feet with quiet determination. Your dog is welcome to stay, Dr. Reeves said, smiling. He seems protective of you. He's not mine, Thomas replied, absently stroking Jasper's head. But he feels like a connection to something important. Dr. Reeves dimmed the lights and began the session, her voice gentle as she guided Thomas into a relaxed state. We're going to return to October 17th, 2015. You're 13 years old. You're following Emma to the park. What do you see? Thomas's breathing slowed. Emma's skipping ahead, blue ribbon in her hair. She doesn't know I'm following her. Dad told me to leave her alone, but I'm worried about Uncle Jack. Why are you worried about Uncle Jack? The way he looks at her, touches her hair, says she's special. Thomas's brow furrowed. Emma told me he showed her pictures that scared her. Said not to tell Mom and Dad. Behind the glass, Collins made a note. This was new information. You're at the park now, Dr. Reeves continued. What happens? Emma's on the swings. Then she sees something. Someone. She walks toward the trees, to our secret path. Thomas's. Breathing quickened. I follow her. She's talking to someone by a car. Dark blue car, broken taillight. Can you see who it is? Thomas strained, his fingers digging into the armrests. A man, tall, silver watch catching the sunlight. He's showing her something. Papers. Drawings. She's shaking her head. His body tensed suddenly. He's grabbing her arm. She's trying to pull away. I run toward them, shouting. The man looks up. It's Jack. He looks surprised, then angry. Thomas gasped, his eyes flying open though he remained in trance. He pushes Emma into the car. I'm running. He sees me, starts the car. I grab the door handle, but he's driving already, dragging me. I fall, hit my head on something. Everything goes dark. Dr. Reeves gently brought Thomas back to full consciousness. He sat trembling, tears streaming down his face. Jasper pressed against his legs, whining softly. I saw him take her, Thomas whispered. I saw Jack Winters take Emma. When the team reconvened in the conference room, Dr. Reeves brought a file folder. I thought these might be relevant now. She opened it to reveal a series of drawings, a child's artwork, but with disturbing elements. Thomas drew these during therapy after Emma's disappearance. The drawings showed stick figures, houses and cars, typical children's art, except for their dark themes. One image stood out. A blue car with a jagged line through one backlight, a tall man with a silver circle on his wrist, and a small figure with yellow hair being pulled into the vehicle. I had these in my records all along, Dr. Reeves said regretfully. At the time, they were dismissed as trauma-induced imagination. Thomas was already being described as confused about what he'd seen. Thomas stared at the drawings, recognition dawning. I drew what I saw, but no one believed me. Jack Winters was a respected businessman, Chief Wilson noted grimly, and you were a traumatized 13-year-old with a head injury. The perfect witness to discredit, Collins added. Chavez studied one drawing more closely. There's something written here, very small. She squinted at tiny letters in the corner of the page. Looks like Silver Fox. Thomas's face paled. That was Jack's nickname around town, the Silver Fox of business, and his license plate, it was personalized. SILFOX. Wilson stood abruptly. Collins, run those plates through historical vehicle registration. Chavez, get a search warrant for Winters's properties, all of them. We've got enough now with the DNA match on the ribbon, Thomas's recovered testimony, and these drawings. As they moved to action, Jasper remained by Thomas's side. His mission, clearly unfinished. News traveled fast in Oak Ridge. By morning, the community bulletin board outside the town hall was covered with freshly printed missing person flyers, Emma's face smiling beneath bold letters reading, Remember Emma. Yellow ribbons appeared on trees and lampposts, a silent show of solidarity that had become tradition on the anniversary of her disappearance, but never before in April. At the Sunrise Diner, Thomas sat with Collins and Chavez, picking at his breakfast while locals pretended not to stare. Jasper lay beneath the table, occasionally accepting bits of bacon from Thomas. Your parents didn't want to join us, Collins asked, noticing Thomas's frequent glances at the door. Dad refused. Mom wanted to, but he shrugged. Their marriage has been on life support since Emma. Dad retreated into work, Mom into grief. I was just in the way. The bell above the door jingled as an older woman entered. Carol Jenkins, Emma's third-grade teacher. She spotted Thomas and approached hesitantly. Thomas Parker, my goodness. She smiled warmly. You've grown up so handsome. Thomas returned her smile. Miss Jenkins, you haven't changed at all. Liar, she laughed, then sobered. I heard they're looking into Emma's case again. That you're helping. We're making progress, Collins confirmed. Carefully, Miss Jenkins nodded. I always believed Emma didn't just wander off. She was too smart, too careful. She squeezed Thomas's shoulder. And I never believed the things some people said about you, Thomas. Never. After she left, Thomas stared into his coffee. The things people said, you wouldn't believe how cruel kids can be. How cruel adults can be. Kids at school? Chavez prompted. And their parents. Thomas Parker, the boy who lost his sister. Or worse, the weird kid who might have done something to her. Even after I was cleared, the whispers continued. A young man approached their table about Thomas's age, with a firefighter's uniform and an uneasy expression. Thomas, Jake Simmons, we were in the same class. Thomas tensed. I remember. Jake shifted uncomfortably. Look, I heard you're back. Because of Emma. I wanted to say, I'm sorry for how we treated you back then, the things we said. You mean like drawing stick figures with bloody hands in my textbooks? Or the time you told everyone I kept Emma's hair ribbon as a trophy? Thomas's voice was calm but edged with old pain. Jake flushed. We were stupid kids. But I'm a dad now, got a little girl myself. Can't imagine what your family went through. He extended his hand. For what it's worth, I hope you find the truth. Thomas hesitated, then shook it briefly. After Jake left, Thomas exhaled slowly. That's new. An actual apology. Outside the diner, a small crowd had gathered near the bulletin board where a local news crew was setting up. A reporter gestured toward their table through the window. Your case is getting attention, Collins observed. That can help or hurt. Thomas nodded. If it pressures Winters, good, but my parents... He trailed off as his phone rang. Speaking of which, it's my mom. He stepped outside to take the call, returning moments later with a troubled expression. Someone left a manila envelope at their door this morning. Inside was a real estate contract between my dad and Winters from 10 years ago, dated 2 weeks after Emma disappeared. It shows Dad sold a piece of land to Winters for 10 times its value. Collins and Chavez exchanged glances. There was a note with it, Thomas continued. Ask your father what he really knows about Emma. Mom's falling apart, and Dad's locked. Himself in the garage. It's a diversion tactic, Collins said. Winters is trying to shift suspicion. Thomas wasn't convinced. What if there's more to the story? What if Dad knows something he never told anyone? As they paid their bill, Thomas's former classmate Melissa Torres stopped him outside. Thomas, I don't know if this helps, but I remembered something. That week Emma disappeared. I saw Mr. Winters at the hardware store. He had scratches on his face. He told everyone he'd been pruning roses, but it was October. Did you tell the police? Chavez asked. Melissa shook her head. My parents said not to get involved. Mr. Winters was important, and we didn't want trouble. As they walked back to the station, Thomas was quiet. A whole town of people who saw things but said nothing. And Emma paid the price. The search. Warrant came through by mid-afternoon, allowing the team to investigate 3 properties owned by Winters Development. The first 2, an office building downtown and a model home in a new subdivision, yielded nothing suspicious. The third location was different. Oak Ridge Industrial Park, Lot 37. Collins read from the property records as they drove past abandoned warehouses. Purchased by Wintercrest Holdings in 2015, 2 months after Emma's disappearance. Wintercrest? Thomas asked from the back seat. Shell company, Chavez explained. Traced back to Winters. He owns dozens of properties through different corporate entities. They turned onto an overgrown access road, stopping before a chain-link fence surrounding a decaying factory. The main building's windows were boarded up, its brick facade crumbling from neglect. Why would a successful developer let a property sit abandoned for 10 years? Thomas wondered aloud. Collins pointed to a development notice on the fence. Zoning variance denied multiple times. Environmental concerns from the old factory operations. Or maybe he never intended to develop it, Chavez suggested. As they approached the fence, Jasper grew agitated, pulling at his leash and whining. The forensics team arrived, setting up equipment while officers secured the perimeter. "What was manufactured here?" Thomas asked, studying the dilapidated structure. "Auto parts," Collins replied, "closed in 2010 during the recession." The factory interior was a maze of rusted machinery and collapsed ceiling tiles. Water damage had warped the wooden floors, and graffiti covered most surfaces. The search team spread out methodically, documenting everything. Jasper, however, was focused. He led Collins and Thomas toward a small outbuilding behind the main factory, a storage shed with a surprisingly new padlock securing its door. "That doesn't match the rest of this place," Chavez observed, photographing the lock. Collins examined it closely. "Wait a minute." He pulled out a small evidence bag containing a rusty key found near the park during the original search for Emma. "Let's try this." To everyone's shock, the key slipped perfectly into the lock, turning with a reluctant click. Inside, the shed was empty, except for a workbench bolted to the far wall and a metal cabinet in the corner. Collins approached the cabinet cautiously, testing it for booby traps before opening it. Inside were car parts, filters, spark plugs, and a replacement taillight for a 2009 Cadillac. "The same model Winters drove back then," Collins confirmed, checking the part number. Thomas stared at the taillight, his breathing quickening. "He replaced it after he hit me with his car." The forensics team arrived, meticulously documenting and collecting everything. When they pulled up the stained tarp covering the floor, they discovered something far more significant, a section of concrete, newer than the rest, approximately 6 by 3 feet. "This was poured more recently," the forensics lead noted, pointing to the color difference. Ground-penetrating radar revealed a void beneath the concrete, a small space that had once held something but was now empty. "We need to break through," Wilson ordered, having arrived minutes earlier. As officers worked to carefully remove the concrete section, a technician examining the workbench called them over. "Found trace evidence in these cracks. Blood. Old, but preserved." Jasper had been circling the concrete slab, becoming increasingly distressed. When they finally broke through, the dog pushed forward, sniffing the empty space beneath. He whined, pawing at the depression in the dirt that had the unmistakable shape of a small body. "She was here," Thomas whispered, his voice breaking. "Emma was here." Wilson put a gentle hand on his shoulder. "She's not here now. This was emptied. Recently, Morrison found her," Collins realized. "That's what he was working on before he died. He found Emma, but couldn't prove who put her here." Thomas knelt beside the empty grave, tears streaming down his face. "He moved her. Winters knew we were getting close, so he moved her." As they continued processing the scene, an officer approached. "Wilson, with a property record." "Chief, this lot was part of a larger parcel. The rest was sold to Robert Parker in 2015, who immediately sold it to Winters for 10 times its value." Wilson's expression hardened. "The land deal Thomas mentioned." "My father knew," Thomas said hollowly. "He must have known something. Or was paid to stop asking questions," Collins suggested grimly. "We need to talk to Robert Parker. Now." Jack Winters sat in the interrogation room, immaculately dressed despite the late hour. His attorney, an expensive import from the city, sat beside him, radiating controlled outrage. On the table between them lay photographs of the shed, the replaced tail light, and the empty grave. "This is harassment," the attorney declared. "My client has cooperated fully with your investigation for over a decade." Chief Wilson remained unruffled. "New evidence requires new questions, Counselor," Collins and Chavez observed from behind the glass while Thomas paced the hallway outside, Jasper at his side. The dog had refused to leave Thomas alone since the discovery at the abandoned factory. "Mr. Winters," Wilson continued, "can you explain why a key found during the search for Emma Parker opens a shed on property secretly owned by you?" Winters shrugged elegantly. "That property has been abandoned for years. Anyone could have used it. As for the key, I have no idea where it came from. Your fingerprints were found on Thomas Parker's journal." I was close to the family. I probably handled many of Thomas's belongings over the years. Wilson placed another photo on the table, the Cadillac tail light. This matches the car you drove in 2015, a car witnesses saw near the park with a broken tail light the day Emma disappeared. I replaced many parts on that vehicle during the years I owned it, Winters replied smoothly. Standard maintenance. The back and forth continued, with Winters having a plausible explanation for every piece of evidence. His confidence remained unshaken until Wilson produced a final photograph, an expensive Swiss watch with a distinctive silver band. This watch was pawned in Portland the day after Emma disappeared. The pawn shop's records show it was brought in by someone matching your description using the name John Williams. The serial number matches a watch you reported stolen 2 weeks later. For the first time, Winters hesitated. I don't recall that watch. Really? Because we have photos of you wearing it at the Chamber of Commerce dinner the week before Emma vanished. And here you are, presenting an identical watch to Robert Parker at the store's anniversary celebration. Winters' attorney leaned over, whispering urgently in his client's ear. If you're suggesting I gave Robert a similar watch, that's possible. Winters recovered. It was a popular model. Wilson pressed further. Why would you give your business partner such an expensive gift just days before his daughter disappeared? Was it payment, Mr. Winters, or insurance? This interview is over, the attorney declared, standing. These insinuations are defamatory and baseless. As they prepared to leave, the door opened and Diana Parker entered, her face drawn but determined. Thomas followed close behind. Diana, Winters said, clearly surprised. What are you doing here? She placed a small box on the table. Inside was a silver watch, identical to the one in the photographs. Robert kept this all these years. He told me it was a business award, but it wasn't, was it, Jack? Winters's composure cracked slightly. Diana, you're upset. This has nothing to do with Emma. I found the original receipt in Robert's things, she continued, her voice trembling. Dated the day before Emma disappeared. He finally told me everything tonight. Thomas stepped forward. What did he tell you, Mom? Diana's eyes never left Winters. That you caught Jack embezzling from the store, thousands of dollars over several years. You were going to expose him, but then... Her voice broke. Then Emma vanished, and suddenly Robert didn't care about the money anymore. And Jack gave him this watch and told him to focus on what's important. The room fell silent as the implications settled. A coincidence, Winters insisted, but his confidence had visibly faltered. Where's my daughter, Jack? Diana whispered. What did you do with my little girl? Winters stood abruptly. I've cooperated enough. Unless you're charging me, we're leaving. As he moved toward the door, Thomas blocked his path. I remember everything now. I saw you take her. I saw you hit me with your car when I tried to stop you. For a brief moment, something cold and alien flashed in Winters' eyes, a glimpse of what lurked beneath the polished exterior, before his attorney pulled him away. Don't say another word, Jack. Chief Wilson, we're done here. As they left, Wilson nodded to Collins. Have officers maintain surveillance on Winters. He knows we're close. He might lead us to where he moved Emma's remains. Thomas looked at his mother, both devastated by Robert's long silence. Dad knew Jack was dangerous, and he still let Emma play alone. Diana's response was barely audible. He never thought Jack would hurt a child. He thought it was just about the money. The Parker home felt like a war zone. Robert sat hunched at the kitchen table, a broken man finally facing the consequences of his silence. Diana moved mechanically, preparing coffee no one would drink. Thomas stood by the window, watching officers search the grounds for any evidence. Robert might have hidden. How could you? Thomas finally asked, breaking the heavy silence. How could you suspect Jack had something to do with Emma and say nothing? Robert's voice was hollow. I didn't know for sure. I just wondered. The timing of everything. But you took his money. Thomas pressed. You took that watch. By then, I thought Emma was already gone. Robert's eyes welled with tears. The police had searched for weeks. What good would accusations do? I had no proof, just suspicion. And we needed the money for your mother's therapy, for the second mortgage. Diana slammed a mug down, shattering it. Don't you dare make this about me. You protected that monster for 10 years, while I visited an empty grave on our daughter's birthday. Collins intervened, his calm voice cutting through the tension. Mr. Parker, we need to know everything. No more secrets. Robert nodded wearily. About a month before Emma disappeared, I found discrepancies in the books. Jack had been skimming for years. When I confronted him, he laughed it off, said we were partners, and he was entitled to a little extra. I threatened to go to the police. He paused, struggling. The day Emma disappeared, we had another argument. I told him I had copies of the evidence and would expose him by the end of the week. And then Emma vanished, Collins said. Robert nodded, unable to meet his son's eyes. After she was gone, Jack came to me with the land deal, the watch, offering to buy out the store, said I should focus on my family, not business troubles. You thought he took her, Thomas whispered. But you still accepted his money. I thought she was dead, Robert shouted, then collapsed into sobs. I thought she was gone forever, and nothing would bring her back. So yes, I took his money, for your mother, for you, for what was left of our family. The revelation hung in the air like poison. Thomas turned away, disgust and grief warring on his face. Chavez entered with a file folder. Thomas, I found something in the hospital records from the day Emma disappeared. You were admitted with a concussion and multiple contusions. The doctor noted possible retrograde amnesia. Thomas took the file, scanning the medical report. I don't remember any of this, just waking up in the hospital with everyone asking where Emma was. You were found unconscious at the edge of the park, Chavez continued. A jogger called 911. You had gravel embedded in your palms and a tire mark. On your jacket. Thomas's hand went to his temple, where a faint scar remained hidden beneath his hair. He hit me with his car. I grabbed the door handle, trying to reach Emma, and he accelerated. The doctors suspected head trauma was causing your memory loss, Collins noted, reviewing the file. But everyone was so focused on finding Emma that your injuries weren't fully investigated. That's why Winters was so confident, Chavez realized. The only witness to Emma's abduction couldn't remember what happened. The front door opened as an officer entered with Jasper. The dog immediately went to Thomas, pressing against his leg supportively. Chief Wilson called, the officer reported. The DNA tests on the blood from the shed came back. It's a match to Thomas. The puzzle pieces clicked into place. Thomas sank to his knees beside Jasper, the full horror of what happened finally clear. He took Emma, and when I tried to stop him, he hit me with his car. Then he must have circled back, thinking I was dead or unconscious, and took me to that shed, where Emma was already. Diana couldn't finish the sentence. But I wasn't dead, Thomas continued, the memories surfacing like bubbles in dark water. I woke up. There was blood. My blood. On the floor. I saw something. Terrible. Then, nothing until the hospital. Collins knelt beside him. That's why the journal entries stop, why the last page was torn out. You wrote it later, when fragments of memory started returning. Thomas nodded slowly. I think I hid the journal after I wrote that last page, buried it where Jack couldn't find it if he came looking. And somehow, Morrison's dog found it, Chavez said, watching Jasper, bringing everything full circle. Robert looked up, his face ashen. What's on that missing page, Thomas? What did you see? Back at the station, forensic analyst Daphne Reyes carefully examined the journal under specialized lighting. The final entry we have was written with the same pen as earlier entries, she explained to the gathered team. But there are indentations on the remaining stub of the torn page that suggest more was written afterward with a different pen. Can you recover what was written? Wilson asked. Partially. I'm using electrostatic detection to enhance the impressions. She adjusted the equipment, revealing faint marks on the page. It's fragmentary, but there's definitely content here. Thomas watched intently as ghostly words emerged on the monitor. That's my handwriting, but it's shakier, like you were injured, Collins finished. The recovered text was incomplete. Woke up in dark place. Blood everywhere. Jack with shovel. Said I fell. Accident. Going to help me. Lied. Hit me again. Have to hide this. Someone finds M in concrete. Thomas stared at the words, his face ashen. I wrote this after. In the hospital, maybe. Dr. Reeves, who had joined them to provide psychological support, nodded. It's possible. Trauma victims sometimes experience windows of clarity between periods of amnesia. Your brain was trying to preserve crucial information before the memories were suppressed again, Chavez suggested. Collins turned to Reyes. Different ink means he used a different pen than his usual one. Hospital pen, maybe? Reyes nodded. The impressions suggest a ballpoint hospital pen, the cheap kind they keep at nursing stations. I remember now, Thomas said suddenly. Not everything, but flashes, waking up on a cold floor. Emma, he faltered. Emma wasn't moving. There was blood. Jack was there with a shovel, looking surprised I was conscious. He told me I'd fallen, hit my head, that he was going to take me to the hospital. But first he took you to the shed, Wilson prompted gently. Thomas nodded. I think he wanted me to see, to know what would happen if I ever told anyone. A traumatized child who'd just witnessed something horrific with a serious head injury, Dr. Reeves said quietly. The perfect scenario for memory suppression. Collins checked hospital records on his tablet. You were admitted at 8:17 p.m., listed as a Good Samaritan drop-off. No name given for who brought you in. Jack, Thomas confirmed. He drove me there, told me to say I fell while running at the park, that no one would believe me if I said anything else. But you still tried to record what happened, Chavez noted. You tore out the page and hid the journal. Thomas closed his eyes, concentrating. I was scared he'd come back, search my room. I remember sneaking out of the hospital, just down to the lobby. I called someone, a friend, I think, to help you hide the journal, Wilson suggested. Thomas nodded slowly. Matt Cooper. He lived near the park. I asked him to hide something for me, somewhere no one would look. That explains how the journal ended up buried near the park, Collins said. But how did Morrison's dog know where to find it? Chief Wilson consulted her notes. Morrison interviewed Matt Cooper during the original investigation, standard canvassing of Emma's friends and neighbors. And Morrison had Jasper with him, Collins realized. That's how Jasper knew the scent and location. But why dig it up now after all these years? Chavez wondered. Thomas looked at Jasper, who sat alertly nearby. Morrison must have figured something out before he died, trained Jasper to find the journal if anything happened to him. Wilson nodded. Morrison was thorough. He probably suspected Winters but couldn't prove it. When he got sick, he made sure the investigation would continue. The DNA results arrived by email, confirming what they already suspected. The blood in the shed belonged to both Thomas and Emma Parker. With the recovered journal text, Thomas's testimony, and the physical evidence, they finally had enough. For an arrest warrant. Jack Winters, Wilson announced, is about to have a very bad day. As the team prepared to move, Thomas approached Jasper, kneeling to meet the dog's intelligent gaze. You knew all along, didn't you? You were finishing what Morrison started. Jasper pressed his muzzle against Thomas's hand, a gesture that felt like both confirmation and comfort. Let's bring her home, Thomas whispered. The arrest warrant arrived at dawn. Chief Wilson assembled her team, including officers from neighboring jurisdictions and the state police. Jack Winters would not be taken lightly, wealthy, connected, and now cornered. Primary location is Winters Development Headquarters. Wilson briefed them, pointing to the downtown office building on the tactical map. Secondary targets are his residence and lake house. We move simultaneously on all three. Thomas watched from the sidelines, Jasper sitting protectively beside him. Chief Wilson had been clear. Neither of them would be involved in the arrest itself. "I need to be there," Thomas insisted. "After all this time." Wilson shook her head. "You're a witness, Thomas, not an officer. We do this by the book. Winters will look for any procedural error to escape justice." Thomas reluctantly agreed to remain at the station with Collins, who would coordinate communications. Diana arrived to wait with her son, their shared vigil a tentative step toward healing. "Your father wanted to come," Diana said softly. "He's at the store, waiting." Thomas nodded, not yet ready to forgive but no longer burning with anger. "When this is over, we'll talk. All of us." Jasper's ears perked up as the radio crackled with the first reports. Chavez's voice came through clearly. "Team Bravo in position at the residence. No signs of activity." Similar reports followed from the Lake House team. At Winter's development, officers reported normal morning activity. Employees arriving. Lights coming on. The plan was to wait until Winters arrived, allowing for a controlled arrest away from his home security systems and potential weapons. At 8:42 a.m., Winters' silver Mercedes pulled into his reserve parking space. "Target has arrived," came the update. Moving into position, Thomas and Diana clutched hands as they listened to the arrest unfold through Collins's radio. The officers intercepted Winters in the lobby, reading him his rights before a crowd of shocked employees. According to reports, he remained eerily calm, his only words to his assistant, "Call Reichman, his high-powered attorney." By noon, search teams had combed through Winters' office, finding nothing immediately incriminating. The real breakthrough came at his immaculate modernist home, where officers discovered a hidden safe behind a bookshelf in his study. "We need the combination," Wilson radioed. "Try 10-17-15, Thomas suggested through Collins. October 17th, 2015, the day Emma disappeared. The safe opened on the first attempt. Inside, they found offshore account numbers, blackmail material on business competitors, and a small key labeled LH Cabinet 3. The lake house became the focus. Sprawling vacation property on Oak Ridge Lake had been in Winters' family for generations, recently renovated into a showcase of wealth. The search team located Cabinet 3 in the boathouse, a weathered storage unit that predated the renovation. When opened, it revealed a collection of small items: a child's bracelet, a pink hair elastic, a small shoe, a torn piece of fabric. Trophies. "There's more," Chavez reported, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "Photos, documentation, multiple victims over at least 15 years. Thomas closed his eyes, the confirmation of his worst fears landing like a physical blow. "Emma wasn't the first." "No," Collins confirmed grimly, "but she appears to have been the last." "The trophies stop after 2015. "Because Jack nearly got caught," Diana whispered, "because of Thomas. The most damning evidence came from a hidden compartment beneath the cabinet, a USB drive containing methodically organized folders. One was labeled Emma P. Within hours, Winters was formally charged with Emma's murder, and investigators began the painstaking process of identifying other potential victims from the trophies and records. When they brought Winters to the station for processing, Thomas insisted on watching from behind the one-way glass. The man who had haunted his life for a decade appeared smaller somehow, his expensive suit and perfect grooming incongruous with the handcuffs at his wrists. "He doesn't look like a monster," Thomas observed. "They rarely do," Collins replied, as if sensing their presence. Winters looked directly at the mirrored window, a cold smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Jasper growled low in his throat, the first aggressive sound anyone had heard from the dignified dog. "They haven't found her, have they?" Thomas asked, referring to Emma's remains. Collins shook his head. "Not yet, but we will. Winters moved her from the shed recently, which means the evidence is still out there. And so is she, Thomas said quietly, waiting to come home. For 48 hours, Jack Winters said nothing. His attorney, Leonard Reichman, orchestrated a vigorous defense, challenging the search warrants and evidence collection procedures. But the mountain of evidence continued to grow as forensic teams processed the trophies found at the lake house. 5 potential victims identified so far, Chief Wilson updated the team. All children who went missing within a 3-state radius between 2000 and 2015. Emma was the last. And the only one connected to him personally, Collins added. His first mistake. The district attorney offered a deal. Life imprisonment instead of the death penalty in exchange for the location of Emma's remains and full confession to all crimes. Winters initially refused, maintaining his innocence despite the overwhelming evidence. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. As Chavez and Collins prepared for another fruitless interrogation session, Diana Parker requested to speak with Winters. Absolutely. Not, Wilson refused immediately. He won't talk to you, Diana insisted, but he might talk to me. We were friends once. He was at my dinner table countless times, held Emma as a baby. That's precisely why it's a terrible idea, Collins argued. But Diana was resolute. I've lost 10 years waiting for answers. I won't lose another day. After intense debate and consultation with the district attorney, they agreed to a monitored conversation. Diana in the interrogation room with Winters, the entire team watching. From behind the glass, when Winters entered and saw Diana sitting alone at the table, his mask of confidence slipped momentarily. Diana, he said, recovering quickly. This is inappropriate. My attorney isn't here, she finished. Just us. Jack, old friends, he sat cautiously. There's nothing to discuss. These allegations are baseless. Diana placed a photograph on the table. Emma at her 8th birthday party, Jack standing behind her with a hand on her shoulder. She trusted you. We all did. I cared for Emma, he replied stiffly. For all of you. Then tell me where she is, Diana said, her voice breaking. Let me bring my daughter home. I don't know what you're talking about. Diana's demeanor changed suddenly, her grief hardening into cold fury. Yes, you do. We found your trophies, Jack, your records, your sick little mementos. For the first time, Winters appeared rattled. Those could belong to anyone. Your fingerprints are all over them, she lied smoothly, following the script they had prepared. And your DNA on everything. Behind the glass, Wilson nodded approvingly at Diana's performance. That's impossible, Winters muttered, then caught himself. Because they're not mine. Diana leaned forward. Robert told me everything. How you were embezzling from the store. How he threatened to expose you the very day Emma disappeared. How you bought his silence afterward. Winters' face darkened. Robert should have minded his own business. A few $1,000s was nothing compared to what we could have built together. So you took his daughter, a child, Jack. I never intended. Winters stopped, realizing his near admission. Diana pressed harder. You never intended what? To kill her or to get caught? The facade cracked. It was an accident. She saw something in my car, evidence of the financial records. I just wanted to explain, to make her understand. She couldn't tell her father. Behind the glass, the team tensed. They were getting a confession. What happened, Jack? Diana asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. She wouldn't listen, started screaming. I just wanted her to be quiet. His eyes had taken on a distant quality. Then Thomas appeared, saw everything. I panicked. You hit him with your car. Winters nodded absently. He grabbed the door handle, trying to reach Emma. I accelerated and he fell. I thought he was dead, or at least wouldn't remember. But you took him to the shed anyway. Made him see what you'd done to Emma. Insurance. In case he remembered. Winters's clinical detachment was more chilling than any display of emotion could have been. I needed him to understand the consequences of talking. Where is she now, Jack? Diana whispered. Winters refocused, seeming to realize how much he'd revealed. "I want the deal, full immunity." "That's not happening," Wilson said, entering the room with Collins. "But the death penalty is still negotiable." Winters calculated his options, then nodded slowly. "The old hunting cabin. Morrison found her. I moved her after he died." As they led Winters away, Diana remained seated, emotionally, drained, but finally holding the truth she'd sought for 10 years. "We'll bring her home," Collins promised. Diana looked up, tears streaming down her face. "Thomas needs to know she didn't suffer. Can you tell him that for me, even if it isn't true?" Autumn returned to Oakridge, the trees surrounding the old hunting cabin ablaze with the same colors that had painted the town the day Jasper arrived at the police station with his mud-caked package. The search team worked with solemn precision, led to the remote location by Winters's reluctant directions. Thomas waited with his parents at the edge of the clearing, the 3 Parkers standing together yet apart, each isolated in private grief. Jasper sat vigilantly at Thomas's side, a steady presence amid emotional turmoil. When the recovery team emerged from the cabin, Thomas knew from their expressions that they had found Emma. Chief Wilson approached them gently. "She's here," she confirmed. "Winters moved her remains after Morrison discovered the original burial site." Diana collapsed against Robert, who held her for the first time in years. Thomas stood rigid, tears streaming silently down his face. "Was Morrison building a case against Winters?" he asked. Wilson nodded. "According to his notes, which we found in his home office, he never stopped investigating Emma's disappearance. He believed Winters was responsible, but couldn't prove it. When he was diagnosed with terminal cancer, he accelerated his efforts. And trained Jasper to find my journal," Thomas finished, looking down at the dog, "to finish what he couldn't." In the days that followed, the town of Oakridge confronted its collective failure, the willful blindness, the uncomfortable silences, the suspicions left unvoiced. The district attorney charged Winters with Emma's murder and the deaths of 4 other children across 3 states. The evidence from his trophy collection ensured he would never walk free again. Emma's funeral was held on a clear Saturday morning, the church overflowing with townspeople who had carried her memory for a decade. Thomas stood beside his parents. At the small white casket, their shared grief finally honest and unhidden. "She loved butterflies," Thomas said during his eulogy, his voice steady despite his tears. "She collected them, not real ones, she'd never hurt anything living, but pictures, toys, anything with butterflies. She believed they were messages from people who had moved on to somewhere better." He paused, looking out at the sea of faces. "For 10 years, I've been trapped in October 17th, 2015. We all have. Today, we finally lay my sister to rest, and with her, the ghosts that have haunted us." Afterward, at the cemetery, Robert approached his son tentatively. "I have no right to ask your forgiveness," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I failed both my children." Thomas was quiet for a long moment. "We all failed Emma in some way, but she wouldn't want us to stay broken." The healing began slowly. Thomas took a leave of absence from the university to stay in Oakridge, helping his parents navigate their grief and working with the families of Winters's other victims. The Parkers established the Emma Parker Foundation, dedicated to supporting cold case investigations and child safety education. 1 month after the funeral, Chief Wilson hosted a small ceremony at the station to honor those instrumental in solving the case. Detective Morrison was recognized posthumously, his daughter accepting the commendation with pride and sorrow, and a special recognition, Wilson announced, for the partner who never gave up. All eyes turned to Jasper, who sat at attention as Wilson knelt to place a service medal on his collar. The elderly dog had found a permanent home with Sergeant Collins, who had formally adopted him after the case concluded. Thomas knelt beside Jasper, gently stroking the shepherd's graying muzzle. How did you know?" he whispered. "How did you know where to find the answers?" Jasper simply leaned against him, brown eyes wise and knowing. A year later, the town gathered again, this time for the dedication of a memorial bench at Riverside Park. The simple bronze plaque read, "In memory of Emma Parker and all missing children. May they find their way home." As the small crowd dispersed, Thomas lingered with Collins and Jasper, now moving slowly with age, but still dignified. "Some cases don't get solved," Collins observed. "Some families never get answers." Thomas nodded, watching a butterfly land briefly on Emma's memorial before fluttering away. "But some do, because of partners like Morrison and Jasper who refuse to give up." He smiled faintly. "And because sometimes the evidence finds its way home, even when it seems impossible." Jasper looked up at Thomas, tail wagging gently, his mission complete.